A very good morning to you. My name is Daniel Wahome and welcome to Sports Check. I know it's been a minute, but we are back and we continue with our conversations all around sport. And today, 3 conversations we're going to have. One, it is about the school games that came to a close on Friday in Arusha, Tanzania. Kenya finishing second behind Uganda. Not a great performance by the admission of one of the people who was there, a Kenyan who was there. Just 5 medals, gold. Uganda won 18 gold. So we're going to have a conversation with that with Moses Mbudhia. He was a basketball commissar at the games, and also joining from Kampala will be the president of the East Africa School Games, Justice Mugisha, and also Arrow's 4-piece. And on Good Morning Kenya this morning, there was a conversation about the incident in Turkana that happened where 8 police officers and 3 civilians were killed in an ambush. So what about using archery as a way of promoting peace and cohesion in the country? So that's a conversation that we are also going to be having this morning. And we're joined by former athlete Irene Limika and 2 archers who are going to be looking for places in the national team. And also we're going to be talking about deaf rugby. Yes, deaf rugby. So we've got the captain of the side and the coach of the side. They're here with us. But beyond that, what's happening in the news? Today is the World Contraception Day celebrations. That is happening in Nairobi. Then we've got the swearing in of the members of the Copyright Tribunal. It's happening at the Supreme Court of Kenya. And then we've got the official release of the Systematic Investigation Report. That's happening also in Nairobi. Then at the Karura Forest, we've got the Kenya Forestry Service. They're going to be receiving firefighting equipment that can be used in case there's a forest fire. And also the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union are going to be having a briefing today. Plus, there's a media briefing on the HIV/AIDS status in Kenya. So we've got our teams on the ground and they will be taking care of that story all through as we have these conversations. Yes, our Twitter handle, remember, is a KBC Channel 1. The hashtag is Sports Check KBC. Get going with that conversation as we move straight now. Now, the first conversation that we are going to have this morning is about deaf rugby. Rugby for the deaf. You've got to believe it because it's an initiative that the Kenya Rugby Union has every Sunday afternoon. People who are hard of hearing or deaf are involved in the sport of rugby. They are coached about how they play the sport. And to do that, we've got somebody who was with Team Kenya in 2016 when they made their debut at the Olympic Games. She still remembers the stories from Nandi Bears Club when, stayed up late. Sarah Agola, she's a coach, and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also, we've got the captain of the side, Martin Ksivwa. Martin, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. And remember, Martin is one of the deaf rugby players, and the voice you'll be hearing is Byron Abulis, and our sign language interpreter within these is Caroline Njue. And let's get straight into this. Sarah, you're with the Kenya Rugby Union, and you could tell us how the journey started about the introduction of rugby for the deaf and hard of hearing in the country.
I think the most important thing just to incorporate deaf rugby, it was based on just trying an initiative that Kenya Rugby is coming up with, and we wanted to give back to the society. So when the deaf rugby approached Kenya Rugby Union, because I work for Kenya Rugby Union as the regional development officer, so that's my region, and I work with schools that basically are deaf, and a couple of them, the hearing, are playing rugby. So for me, it was an initiative, and I was like, why can't I bring in the deaf people just also to play rugby? So there was an element where kids are playing rugby, but then now all of a sudden the parents also of the deaf hearing, of the deaf are also probably interested in playing rugby. So when they heard about Kenya Rugby Union, so Martin and the chairman and the secretary of the Deaf Federation approached the union, and there was a very good talk with the directors and the chairman of Kenya Rugby Union, and they were like, okay, the
chairman was Oduor Gangla.
Oduor Gangla, and the Oscar Mango is the director in charge of the squads, and then there's director in charge of the development, so that's Kikechi Combo. Yes. So 3 of them, we had a very lengthy discussion, and we were like, okay, why can't we just step in and assist the deaf? So when I'm coming in as a volunteer coach, just to give the skills, and of course now the expertise that come with it. It was very easy just for me now to come in and just give them the skills that they actually require. Yeah.
Well, and let me just come to Martin. And Martin, you could actually tell us more about how you came up with the idea of a federation to run rugby for the deaf. And first of all, apologies. First, let me say sorry about your accident and your arm. So you can continue, Martin.
Yeah, thank you. I think the idea came to being around 5 years ago. But as an individual, I started playing rugby while I was still in high school. Then when I was done with schooling, I used to see that we had deaf officials who had established a federation for the Kenya Deaf Rugby. And I thought that is an opportunity for me to join up. And because we have many deaf persons within the 47 counties who are interested in the same sport. And my intention was also to have this sport being established within the school sports event.
Aha. So having this, what has been your journey, Martin, as you reached out to schools to help people understand that, yes, even those who are hard of hearing or those who are deaf can play rugby?
Yes. We have been working on that. I think before Corona happened, we used to have a number of games that we could have with local teams. And it wasn't easy. We failed a number of them, but later on we went on until we reached the final level in other matches. And that brought about the understanding like, oh, also deaf players can do this similarly to how hearing players do that. And that brought more of that sensitization and awareness about the deaf abilities. So we are thinking of like how we can work with other teams. Similarly, like we have the KCB, and that is how we started like connecting with the Kenya Rugby Union so that we can have that capacity building and grow up for the future.
All right. So working with the union, Sarah, let me come. Yeah, and reaching out because there are clubs around Nairobi, so you're working here. It's easy to start. I know you do it at Ngong Road. There's Impala and Kenya Harlequin, Nondis. On this other side, we've got KCB Rugby Club. But at the moment, they really don't have a home. How did you reach out to the clubs to give these players a space where they can play?
First of all, especially once we identified that the number was huge. And
about how many?
There are like, because we have both men
and women.
And the men on a good day, they will come like 45. That's a huge number.
That's a full squad.
That's a full squad. That's actually a full squad. Actually, two full squads.
2 full squads.
Yes. And then there are women now who are 25. So again, that's a huge number.
That is one squad.
That's one squad. But now, when we looked at it and we're like, okay, fine, we're trying first of all to establish, because we're trying to first of all to modify the game, and we're trying to modify the rules in such a way that even the deaf are able to fit in their clubs. Remember, the hearing, they have their own rules, but the deaf, especially when you start working with them, their vision is very good, but they can't hear.
Yes.
So it really takes someone with patience and courage and resilience to work with them. So that's how now, when we got into the Kenya Rugby, we said, okay, fine, because we've already had a very lengthy discussion, why can't we sit down with both of them? We modify the rules, so then now when they go to clubs, because now, of course, now they can approach every club. A club can take them, because you have 5 clubs, core team clubs in Nairobi, who are in the Kenya Cup. And of course, if you have Kenya Cup, then of course you have ESS. Then you have another 10 clubs within Nairobi who are also playing on a lower divisions. And any person who is deaf can easily go to any club, as long as the Kenya Rugby Union has already given the mandate that they can actually go to the clubs and play. So just to speak about the union, I mean, it's also playing a very big role in terms of just trying also to accommodate the deaf. And now there will not be separate rules. So if the deaf comes in, they'll be able just to be incorporated in their system. Yeah. All
right. Well, we'll be talking about the clubs and how you've mentioned them. You've mentioned about 5 Kenya Cup clubs. I can actually easily start mentioning them one by one. Well, we continue with our conversation right here on Sports Check. And The conversation is about deaf rugby in Kenya and how it was introduced. We're with Sarah Agola, who's a coach for the deaf rugby side, and we've got Martin Ksivwa, who is, he plays for that team. And Sarah, before we took that break, you mentioned to us about the clubs that are in Nairobi, the 5 clubs in the Kenya Cup. We can talk about Queens, we can talk about Mwamba, KCB, there's Homeboys. We can also add Kenyatta University, Black Blood. We can't avoid them. And there's also Impala Club, Nondis. Those are the key clubs around just here in Nairobi.
And now Catholic University
and Catholic,
is,
and the Queer monks, the monks as they are called. So how have these sides now picked up rugby for the deaf?
The sides, I'd really say, first of all, we are just trying to approach the clubs. Like I said, we are trying to put the policies into place. And we are trying, again, just to, like I said, the modification of the rules from the union, because it needs to be standardized in such a way that even when they go to the clubs, like we will find players who basically want, or rather, they are leaving the sides of Queer, and they don't need to come all the way to the union. And they have players who are living on the sides of KCB, where Martin started off from. It doesn't need to come all the way to Ngong Road. That is Thika Road. And the guys who are living in Kibera, in the outskirts of, Ngong Road, can actually meet at KRU, where now, of course, there's Kenya Harlequins who is there, and there's Impala. So along Ngong Road, there are like 3 clubs and Homeboys. So that is our approach towards incorporating deaf rugby, so that even when they start, even when their tours are over, they can still go back to clubs and continue playing. Now they are training as the national team because they have a big assignment ahead of them, and that's where the focus is, because that is now the big thing that is ahead of us. So that's how now we are trying to shift from, even after doing all that, we are trying now to shift on just trying to prepare them for the tournament that is coming ahead of them.
Well, Martin, it's been mentioned you live along Thika Road, and KCB, a dominant force in Kenyan rugby at the moment. I mean, they've won that title until they were winning until Cabras decided that they had to pick one. Apologies, they had to pick one. Martin, just tell us how you picked up the game. Was it just by watching what was going on at the Lions Den, or was it through school?
Well, I think it's most of a feeling. I've always been moved towards rugby. When you're exposed to different sports, there's a particular sport that you'll see and you feel like you are really drawn into, because I didn't get the same feeling with other sports. So I thought to myself that I should start playing rugby so that in future I can get an opportunity to represent my country, Kenya.
How long have you played the sport?
5 years now.
Well,
5 years, yeah.
5 years and still going strong. And when you picked up the sport, I know you picked up with those who are, those who can hear normally, so I know there's a lot of conversations. How then, were you able to understand the rules and also have a conversation with, say, a referee on the pitch, or even with your coach when training?
Well, it has always been a challenge. Because when I was integrating myself with the hearing team, I used to visually try to understand the rules of the game. Because I know rugby is technical, but I'm lucky enough my coaches were quite patient with us as we play with the hearing counterparts. Because at the moment we don't have any qualified deaf referee. So we would sometimes even think maybe the referee favors the other team because we didn't understand the actual rule that is happening there. But bit by bit, we started picking up on the rules and how the game ought to be played. And the more we had the exposure with different teams, we got the niche of it.
Well, you've had it from Martin himself, plays deaf rugby and the rules, and we'll be coming to that conversation about the rules because, in rugby, the referee is almost more of a director of the game. If there is a tackle, he'll say, tackler, release, you'll hear something like that, or you'll be warned. Well, please keep your feet down, or if there is in case there's a mall, he will say mall. So that means all that has got to be done differently when it comes to this kind of rugby. We've got Sarah Agola. She was with Team Kenya in 2016 when they made their debut at the Olympic Games. And also we've got Martin Ksivwa, and he is a player who does deaf rugby. And Martin has told us about, how he learned that. And let me come to you, Sarah, because rugby is a game where there are rules and different. Let's start with some of the changes that you kept mentioning that have some modifications in terms of this. How then do you, for example, communicate with the deaf people when a tackle has been made? Because once you tackle a player in rugby, the next thing you've got to do is release.
It is easy if you understand players. That's what I'll say. And my coaching style is different from just hearing people. So for them, I do a lot of classwork. I do a lot of class theory. So I do theory with them, a lot of blackboard. So I need to explain to them what we are going to do next. So and it has to be out of the field, first of all. So they'll sit down, I will explain to them what it is that we are going to do, and then once they've already understood, then we go to the field. Then there are modifications that I've done. For a hearing, you will carry a whistle. For them, you will carry a flag. Like I said, they have a very good vision. So immediately you raise a flag, they will know this is something that doesn't need to happen. And you have to be very fit. So if you are very unfit, you modify your pitch in such a way that you are able to get to their breakdown. Because then they're very fast and they understand the game. And even when they go down, unless you understand how it's done, you can't correct it. Yes.
All right. So let's start. For example, how would you communicate? You want to communicate, for example, that somebody has done, say, an offside infringement. Say there is a rack that has been formed, and somebody has come in from the side. How do you indicate that? Because what would be, the normal one would be the referee would blow, and then put the hand and indicate, that this is a penalty.
Yes. So in this occasion, you use your flag. So you take it up. Like for example, if they've infringed, or it's a high tackle. Just it's signs. Remember when you're doing the normal rugby, you communicate to the audience who are sitting at the stand.
Yes. Actually, rugby is a sport that has its own sign language.
Yes, so we have our own sign language. So I use the same sign language to them. So you raise your flag, they are able to see their flag, then you indicate like this is a high tackle. Or even when you want them to do a proper tackle, you have to show your shoulder. So they will understand because all of them is signs. But again, like I'm saying, if it's a forward pass, of course, again, it's a sign language that they just do a forward pass. But now the intense bit comes in when you're now doing the coaching. Yes. So
now, because we have it back on screen, Sarah. So let's go through this. The first one, in rugby, you're supposed to tackle shoulders downwards,
hips downwards.
Hips.
No, waist downwards.
Waist downwards.
Yes.
Because I know there are those, but I know if you grab my hands here, still acceptable. But for the high tackle, what we would call in the olden days a neck tackle.
A neck tackle.
Yes. So you can take us through the sign language for the different offenses and violations of the laws of the game that people understand.
People understand.
Yes.
So for instance, this is a game of rugby. So there is Martin and there is colleague. And of course there's always contention where they come in because it's a contest game. So Martin comes and this person is going to score, and Martin goes for a high tackle so that he can stop this person. So what you do is you raise your flag up, you point the person. So once you see the flags, he will stop. Automatically, there's a way they just stop. Once you do the flag, they stop. So they stop, and then, because I know some bit of the sign, so they'll stop. And then now, once they stop, they will look at me. Then I will tell them it's high tackle. And then if it's a yellow card, for them, you don't give them yellow card yet, because you want to correct them. Then you tell them they move 10. But it's a high tackle. If it's a rack situation where now they are diving on a rack,
yes.
So that, and they do that a lot. If you check of the games, so because they feel the pain when they think by hitting someone so hard, it's when someone has felt the pain. Yes, that's something that I've actually noted. So they want to hit you so hard to an extent that you feel the pain. then now automatically they stop.
I've heard that. I hear there is a name for that, ubaba.
Ubaba.
That's what they want.
Now they are bringing the ubaba on the field. But you see, rugby is not about ubaba. Rugby is about brains. So even me, I want to transfer the little knowledge so that they can start thinking about it. So even when you dive in a rack, they have to be on their feet.
Yes.
Because when you stay on your feet, it means the chances of injuries are very slim. So slowly by slowly, they are getting it, but they have to keep on doing it so that they understand it much better. Yes.
All right. Well, let's come back to that, and we'll be coming to that. And so there you are, so these rules, and also, for example, now when you've got a scrum, how do you get it going?
That's a very interesting one. I think for me, that's the challenge that comes in. I'm so happy that at some point I get an interpreter, because I mean, I use your office to get an interpreter who helps me over the Sunday.
Oh, you talk about Lensa?
I talk about Lensa, so she really helps out a lot. So Lensa will come to where the point is. You know, there's crouch. So they crouch. So you have to crouch. But you see, when it's times for engagement, where the sequence now come in, crouch, then there's bind, then there's set. But remember, they cannot shove before the ball gets to the tunnel. Then they see, so then they want to see, they want to do what they see. They want to shove early. So then they want to shove. So that's how now the interpreter needs to come in and start telling, because I can't interpret. So the interpreter will tell them that do not shove before the ball gets to the tunnel. So they have to wait. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So, Sarah, well, this is getting interesting. I can see. Martin, you'll come and tell us about some of your playing experiences when we get back. We continue with this conversation, and this is about deaf rugby in Kenya. And we are with Martin Ksivwa, who plays deaf rugby for the country, picked up the game 5 years ago, and he's continuing. And we've got Sarah Agola, who's their coach. And let me come to you, Martin. And I wanted to speak about, deaf rugby, once you picked up and more deaf rugby players came up, the kind of competition and the growth that you have seen in the sport so far.
Yeah, yes, I think when we started, we were very, very green at the moment. And our coaches had to start like basic, treating us as children at the moment. Like we started kindergarten in the process. So we were to be taught how the game flows, the rules of it, and with that encouragement, with that nurturing, we also picked up the motivation ourselves, and we started spreading the word to other deaf persons to join up. So when we started having our matches, our first experience was with the officiating of the game, and how that happens, because we're having a game with a hearing team. But the modification was first, we had our coach to referee the match, because he would understand the needs of the deaf players within that particular sport. And that had helped, because when we play with a referee who doesn't understand our needs, they will whistle, and things happen, people score, but we don't have an idea if the score that we had has been cancelled and you have celebrated for that particular score. So with that particular experience and that interaction, I feel we are at a better place. We have that experience also that we have impacted to our coaches, and we have also learned from them in terms of how to integrate the same. And we are jazzed up for the sport. Yeah.
Well, quite interesting. And now, what's your playing position, and how do you find playing in that position? And how you would like to grow, especially say in the 15s and the 7s.
Well, I do play center, and I would like to grow in the 7s.
Aha. Very well. Those are the people who, if you come across a ball and you're trying to break through the line,
they can tell you.
They will give you something we've called, they will give you that ubaba. Sarah, tell us now about the competition side of it, where Kenya is at the moment, and the competitions that are coming, because we know there is the Rugby World Cup in Argentina. There was one 4 years ago. 3 years ago, 2019, and there's one coming up to Argentina. Tell us about that.
So there's, the big assignment is the World Cup for the deaf. But in between that, we need to get some local tournaments for them, and we've got an invitation to go to Uganda to go and compete. So that will be their first international competition with me. So then that will give me a basis of checking what it is that needs to be done and what needs to be fixed before the big tournament. But having said that, still within on Sundays, we normally have like teams who come for competition with them. So this one also just give them an idea of what needs to be done, because they play with the hearing. So we get like every Sunday, like after 2 Sundays, we'll invite a team to come and play with them. So then this will also help you to check, like for example, Martin is playing center, and Martin needs to create space so that he can be able to pass the ball to the winger, who then goes and score. But so those are the small things that also, the more they play the games, the more they understand, the more they are able now to execute it very well when they are playing a competition. So those are the small things that I'll be working on. All right,
competitions proper now. The leagues, the games, what happens Sunday afternoons, and also I'll be talking about Uganda and where they are about the game.
Uganda, the reason why we're even asking for tournament in Uganda, because Uganda, they don't have a deaf rugby team. So that will be a very good thing. They are going for a hearing tournament. They have lots of tournaments within, the way us guys have. But for them, just getting them an exposure, because you don't want also culture shock, because they've never been out of the country, can you imagine? So some of them, they are coming with an idea of they see what rugby is, but then now they'll go to a different country, they experience different culture, so many things that needs to come in. And that's the reason why we are trying to push them to go to Uganda, so that they're able to just, to check what it is that is there ahead of them. When it comes to competition, I think that's the most important thing also. I'll talk about, because we've done 16 weeks of training, intensive training. So last Sunday they started they'll do 12 weeks, no, they'll do actually 8 weeks of gym now the strength and condition. So they have the basics, they have what it is that it takes. But then now also we have to do injury prevention measures. Like they need to go to the gym. So they need to work with their cause, they need to work with their mobility, they need to work with anything that needs them to have. So we're just trying to equip them so that they have what it takes for them to take to the pitch, and of course play with the big boys. Because Uganda is not bad, but it's a very good country for us to get a competition with them. Yeah, so that's how we are looking at it.
All right, let me come to you, Martin. And for the last 16 weeks, what are the things that you've picked up and improved on? And number 2, 8 weeks of gym. Are you ready for that? Because they say no pain, no gain.
Yeah, first for the gym, I'm totally ready. I think everything that will happen from now henceforth, I'm totally in for that. Because my objective is to fight up for the position in the Deaf World Cup. Yeah.
All right. Now, skill set improvement. What are some of the things that you've improved? You play center, which means you actually have to control the midfield, create spaces, make the tackles in case you're defending. How has that improved?
Yeah, I think I've picked up a lot of skills during our intensive training period. And because I always remember what the coach has informed us. And we know that we are going to have an international game, and it won't be easy, and we need the skill for that.
All right. Now, Sarah.
Yes.
Reaching out to schools for the deaf and also other towns, so that it doesn't, when the national team is named, it doesn't look like a Nairobi 15. What's the plan for that?
Well, the plan is good. The planning is very good. We are doing a lot of planning. We are sitting down. Anytime we come up with a good idea, we table it up. We talk to the management. and we see how it works. But the most important thing is we want to go and do CSR. This group of players who are now doing it, Martin and the crew, because we have both men and women. Mm-hmm. So the women will go and mentor other women in their schools. And then Martin is coming from a school. I mean, and there are like 5 players from the school that have actually joined rugby. They're in the deaf rugby.
What's the name of the school, Martin?
Kambui. Kambui.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Kambui School for the Deaf, yeah.
For the deaf, and it's in Kiambu.
It's in Kiambu,
yes. So that's our main thing. So we want to take, once immediately they've come from the tournament, we want them to wear the national jersey. We want them to go. We want to go and preach this game to the deaf. I mean, it should not just be the hearing alone playing the game. It should also be. It should also be for the deaf. So we want Martin and the likes and the people who are in the national team to go and do CSR for them. So our duty is just to ensure that even after they've played rugby, we are also able to empower them with other skills, especially for coaching, because they won't play rugby forever. And even for officiating, I mean, Martin and the likes are the people who are going to take this game to the next level. Yeah, so that's our dream.
All right.
For now.
Martin, I'll give you a final word. I know Coach has mentioned that there's the work around being on the technical bench. You can be a physio, you can be a coach, you can be an analyst, and also you can be a match official. What's the pathway for you? What would you like to do, Martin?
Well, I think I'll want to be a coach. I'll really want to be a coach because me as a player, having that experience and learning the rule of the game and how to go about it, how to modify where it's needed, I think I can impact that to the next generation. At the moment, as you see, the deaf team, the challenge that we're having is in terms of training because of the location and where the deaf person reside. So I think what we'll push for at the moment as a parting shot will be like if we can get more sponsorship on the work of that to help us capacity build and have more opportunity of training and have leagues that we can participate and get that exposure. I think it would be great.
All right, thank you very much, Martin Ksivwa, skipper, Deaf Rugby Kenya, and Sarah Agola, coach of Deaf Rugby Kenya. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm sure a couple of weeks back, we did that story and everyone is happy to see this sport going. And as you prepare for the tour of Uganda and also for Argentina 2023, we wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we shall be taking a short break, and when we come back, it's all about great hand-eye coordination. We're talking about archery, and this time it's 4-piece. Here's the twist. The person behind this was a star steeplechaser. How did she move from jumping over barriers and water barriers and the hurdles and decide to get into archery? Irene Limika joins us at the end of this break.